It's one thing to help people renovate their kitchen or build a house. It's another thing to help people renovate their own emotional home and rebuild their lives from whatever platform or standpoint that they happen to be on right now.
Hey there, it's Angela. If you've ever felt trapped in burnout, constantly pushing forward even when your passion feels drained, this episode's for you. Designer and author Amanda Greaves shares her journey from creative exhaustion to personal transformation, revealing what it takes to rebuild careers and lives. Stay with us. This is ARTS Redefined. Hi, Amanda. How are you?
Hi, Angela. I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I believe in serendipity or fate, and I think that this conversation this time of year is super timely because so many people face burnout. Really, for a lot of people, it's the beginning of planning for the next fiscal year. How do we keep going?
Yeah. So my story really started, I've been a designer for 20 years and I owned my own firm for 14 of those years. Because as many creatives do, we think we can do things better than others. And so we take it upon ourselves with that entrepreneurial spirit of, hey, let's do this and see if we can recreate the wheel in some fashion. Hence me owning my own firm. And I loved it. I've loved being a designer for, I made that decision when I was in high school and I carried through, but it got to a point really during COVID where the construction and design industry, as well as every other industry in the world, really shifted. And I was finding that the expectations of my clients, the expectations of my vendors and the builders and some of the other creatives that I was working with, everything shifted. And it shifted in a way that was more demanding. There were less resources. And I started to really feel the pangs of, what am I really doing and why am I doing this anymore? And I look at that 2020 as an opportunity for me to have stepped back and understand, all right, Amanda, what do you really want to do? And it took just about 4 years for me to get to the point of complete and utter burnout. With running my firm, I had 5 employees and I wasn't doing the design anymore. I wasn't being creative anymore. I was running a business and a lot of the joy and the fulfillment had been pulled out of me, especially while I was trying to maintain other people's expectations. And when we try to stay at that level on a regular basis, it sucks the creativity right out of the opportunity. And that for me was the burnout phase. And that's when I was in a pretty horrible relationship. And so at the end of 2022, the relationship thankfully ended. And one of my largest clients also, and I didn't know at the time that I should have been thankful, he also ended all of our contracts, which was about 60% of my projected revenue for 23. And I panicked. But at the same time, I also looked up and said, thank you for the opportunity, because I was completely burnt out. I was a shell of myself. And for the last couple of years, I've learned how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and learning how to let go not only of other people's expectations, because there's not a whole lot I can do about those, but my own. And by letting go of these success expectations of myself, I've allowed that creative nature to really seep back into who I am. And it's really started to shift my perspective on what it is that I'm meant to be doing, how I'm meant to be doing it. I don't feel burnt out anymore. I feel like the shell of me has started to fill in properly. And the last couple of years have been very, very eye-opening. And I have learned so much about how not to burn yourself out and how to do self-care and really just take your foot off the gas for a hot minute and coast for a bit.
The current state of business in the arts, it is go, go, go.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we navigate, because creatives are always thinking and creating, sometimes they'll jump on or come up with an idea on a whim.
Mm-hmm.
And how that's hard to keep up. So what advice do you have? How do you stop when you feel like there's no other option? What can you do to shake that kind of the status quo of just always being in a cycle of burnout that you can't seem to just gather your mind and plan proactively?
Yeah, well, that's such a great question because we are just so go, go, go. And it is all about learning, not innately understanding how to navigate, but learning how to navigate these different times. And they're changing so quickly. But for me, it's the universe has a funny way of telling us when to stop. And you're asking me, how did I learn how to stop? And how can I advise others to? The universe will tell you. And if you repeatedly ignore what the universe is saying, it will repeatedly tell you until finally you get to the point where you're either so sick or you get hurt. And by getting hurt, I mean physically or emotionally or mentally, however it may be. For me, I was so burnt out. I got 2 years ago, I got shingles. So I had to stop because I had to heal my body. I wish that we were not in an atmosphere, in an industry where it takes us getting physically ill to pay attention to what's going on around us. And what I've learned from that situation is we need to pay attention to our intuition. We know that we need to continue to keep going. We know that it's important to do that fundraiser that's going to cost 15 and we're going to net 20, but we're going to take 5 home. We know that there's an importance to continue to do our job, but what I would like to remind people is not all of it is as important as taking care of ourselves. And when we are working with creatives and we do come up with ideas on a whim, lots of times when we are forcing it, when we are navigating so strongly towards that primary goal that we've lost the intention, we've lost the point of why we're doing it, which yes, it is to raise money, but why are you raising the money? Where is the purpose of this money going? And when you can come back to the heart of the matter and take a minute to reflect on why you started in the first place, you'll realize that there's probably at least a half a dozen tasks that can be delegated or deleted that don't have to be a priority today or this week. And I have found that my creativity has come back when I take a walk at lunch or I take a personal day because I can't stand walking into my house and it's a mess because I'm so busy at work doing all of the things. You have to take time to pick up your own space, and your own space being your physical space, but also your internal energetic space. With all of the information that's available out there, whether it be AI or just expectations from others and just evaluating what it is that we're doing, taking the time to just take your foot off the gas before you get sick, before you get hurt, before somebody comes in and says, no, I can't do this anymore. That to me is more important than keeping going.
So it's interesting. I like to look at things or shift mindsets and look at through other lenses.
Yep.
And as I'm hearing you talk, I'm thinking, okay, great, Amanda, that's lovely. It's not lovely that you got shingles and I'm sorry for that, right? But I'm not going to get sick, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't, I'm just going to keep going. One more season, one more year, if I can plow through. What would you tell yourself? What would you tell 2019, 2020 Amanda
Mm-hmm.
that now? That maybe was that Amanda mindset of just one more, let me just give it a one more client or one more project. Or
what would I tell her now?
What would you tell that Amanda?
I would I would say it's probably more important that you take some time right now, especially when you're sitting here saying that you can't. When we get to a point that we feel that you cannot possibly take the time away, you cannot possibly not do this, not do that project, not answer this email, not do that, this high level expectations. I would have told Amanda, you know what? Turn the computer off, go away for a long weekend and bring nothing but a pen and your journal and write down and understand what makes you happy. Where is your fulfillment? The emails are still going to be there 2 days from now. The mess in the house is still going to be there 2 days from now. It doesn't all have to happen now. Give yourself the 48 hours. This is the only body, the only vessel that you have to continue to move forward. And why would you not want to take the time to plan your life the same way that you plan your events, the same way that you do your business strategies, the same way that you plan your vacations? Take a minimum of 24 hours, 2 nights away. Because the first one, let's be honest, you're still bumbling around and kind of decompressing from the drive or the flight or whatever it may be. By the time the second night rolls around, you are ideally in your space. And I would say, Amanda, give yourself a couple of days to really just dig into you and understand what makes you happy. And if that is not happening now, and if you can't see it happening 6 months from now, then you need to make a change today.
I too look at the pandemic as, for me, I thought it was going to be a line in the sand where all of our businesses were shut down for a year, right? We couldn't do the performances, we couldn't create the exhibitions, function the way that we have functioned forever. And so I thought, okay, if we're ever going to change as an industry in the way that we operate and the way that we build sustainability, now's the time to do it. And I'm so surprised at how many have gone back to the way it was pre-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But our environment has changed so much. Audience behaviors have changed. Philanthropy is changing. Politically, we have, landscapes that, good or bad, are so extreme one side or the other.
Yeah.
What was your aha moment that allowed you to almost like snap out of your status quo or, that cycle that you were stuck in?
Yeah. So that's a really great question, because as I started the conversation, wouldn't it be nice if we had the insight to go back, or at least to sit here today and say, I think I'm going to take a couple days and do some planning. It didn't happen that way for me. Yes, in 2020, I had the opportunity to pause like everybody else did for a hot minute and say, okay, is this really what I want to do? But at the end of 2022, I had a back-to-back moment, which became my aha. I had the end of the relationship and the end of a huge project, or multiple projects, that really my entire world, my personal and my professional life, stopped. And I was left in the middle of what felt like a charred forest, looking around, searching, trying to pick up the pieces. And that's not the first time that it's happened, but this is the first time that it happened when I said to myself, you are at the center of this burnt down existence. You are the one, Amanda, that needs to go in and do some healing of your own. Because what I was projecting out to the world was, and not all bad things, was intensity, excitement. Let's keep going. This is important. Let's make sure that this is a priority. I was projecting my expectations without understanding where my why was. And my aha moment was when I realized that I had the best intentions, but my productivity was scattered. My focus was diluted because I was in too many different places at the same time. And again, with the political climate, with the expectations, with the way that the world was changing, I realized that I hadn't been keeping up. And that's when I stopped and started to understand, what do I need to keep up with? And does it still resonate with a decision that I made when I was in high school to be a designer? And my answer, the more I dug in, and the more tears I shed, because I started to uncover some truths that I'd been running from for years, the more I realized being that kind of a creative, shall we call it, lead designer, director of a company, owner of a company, was not what was making me happy. If anything, it was doing the opposite. It was sucking the life out of me. And when I stopped long enough in the midst of my aha burnt down forest, I thought, I can't change anything or anyone around me until I look inside and understand who I am really, and what what my purpose is here. What's my mission? And that's when things really started to shift, because I started doing the work on myself and didn't expect anybody else to do it for me or even with me. And the more I dug, the more clear my why became and the more creative I got, actually, which was a benefit of the whole thing.
So fast forward to today or the last 6 months.
Yeah.
Where are you creatively? Where are you physically, mentally?
Yeah. Yeah. So creatively, well, I took 2023 and I took that big aha moment to dig in, and I wrote a book. I wrote my first book. I say first because I know there's another one in there. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I wrote The Chameleon Diaries, which is a memoir and a guide to self-discovery. It's all about stories about myself, but intuitive questions that I ask of the reader to, hey, have you ever been in a situation like this? Have you ever had a conversation with somebody in that way? Is there somebody in your life that maybe you need to forgive or learn about yourself? And by doing it in that Q&A type of fashion, I was doing the Q and the A on myself. And I published the book in February 24. And since then, I've realized that my message is more, I want to help other women and men as well, other creatives that are in that burnt out state. I want to show people how I figured out what my mission is, what's important to me, why is it important. But that's almost like a benefit to digging in and understanding, well, how did I get so like this in the first place? Like, what was that experience when I was 8 years old that I really needed to dig in and dissect and reframe and stop blaming other people? I got to a point where I didn't want to be or play the victim anymore. And by doing the assessments on myself, by understanding who I really am at my core, I turned that victimology into being more of a victor. And by pausing often and understanding how to communicate differently. So for me, it was more of a creative opening. You know, I shut down for a bit, but it was a creative opening with the writing of the book. And now I'm doing more motivational speaking and creating courses to guide others how to navigate, ideally avoiding burnout, but how to navigate what happens once you do and what worked for me. And ideally, you know, at least a couple of those options will work for somebody else as well.
Interesting, because you seem lighter when you talk about the work now, but your creativity, you're still creative, but you're channeling that in a different way. Or like the output is different than what it was for 20 years.
Totally. And it's interesting because the output is still directed in the capacity of, I want to serve and help other people. But that word serving was not in my vocabulary for 20 years. For 20 years, I wanted to help people build their dream homes. I wanted to help people with the knowledge of how to do design and how it interplays with construction. Now I look at it as, I want to get the word out that there is actually a way that you can design and create and intertwine those tools for your own internal building system. And I do feel lighter because I feel like it's like, I want to talk about people's souls. I want people to get their aha moment. I want them to feel the joy and to shed the tear and be like, oh my God, she totally understands. There's somebody else out there that gets what I'm going through. And it's one thing to help people renovate their kitchen or build a house. It's another thing to help people renovate their own emotional home and rebuild their lives from whatever platform or standpoint that they happen to be on right now.
Yeah. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about going back to what you said at the beginning about the expectations that we put on ourselves. And I think we get stuck in a place where we assume what others expect too much rather than stopping and really listening or leaning into. And I think it isn't as intense or so pressure filled as we may think that it needs to be.
It's a fraction of the amount of pressure that we think it needs to be. And I say that because, one thing that I have started to really lean into this over the last few years is my own spirituality and realizing that there is a power and a grace around us. And the expectations of others lots of times are really just the expectations that we are putting upon ourselves, but we are looking to others to validate them. And when I stopped looking to others to validate myself and started looking at myself to understand what I was doing and why, I didn't need the validation from anywhere because it became more of an intuitive, innate understanding within the greater picture of my life and the lives that I am involved in. And it's crazy because by removing expectations, this appreciation things comes into play. You expect somebody to show up. Okay. Well, if they're a little bit late, wouldn't it be great? At least they got there. You appreciate their attendance. It's wonderful that they showed up. All we can do is learn how to communicate better with ourselves and better with others to take those expectations and really just shift the energy around them so we can appreciate each other more. And tis the season, right? Where everybody's way more stressed out. Christmas is only a couple weeks away. It's the end of the year. We have all of these tasks and endless to-do lists that need to get accomplished, whether it's your fiscal year or planning for the following. And my feeling is that we are only human, regardless of how much AI can help us. And there's only so many things that we can do. And I say, let's figure out what the big rocks are. Figure out what the most important things are for each day. And the little things, maybe they're meant to fall through the cracks. Maybe those expectations are meant to shape and reform what our next year is going to look like a little bit.
That's great. So a final tip or final behavior or framework strategy that you can leave the listeners with?
Yeah. Final tip or strategy would be, you've already said it, learning how to lean in to your own space and grace. And if that sounds completely foreign, I would follow that up with giving yourself even just 5 minutes of peace and quiet and sitting on a park bench, or it's okay to just stare out the window for a few minutes and start to breathe again and start to understand where your breath is. Because once we come into our own space, even if it's just for a moment every day, that will start to become a better habit, and what becomes important will start to come forward more and more. So I'd say breathing and giving yourself 5 minutes of just chill time.
Yeah, that sense to me, even I can already feel time lengthening. And almost by stopping, you're giving yourself more time and more space.
It's amazing. Yeah, when you do stop, take your foot off the gas and sometimes even take your hand off the steering wheel, time does have a tendency to get into that matrix time warp, if you will, and it stretches itself out a little bit because you realize some things aren't as important as you make them, and it's okay to let them go, creating more space.
That's so great. Well, we are at the time of the conversation where I like to end it asking my guests the same question, which is, and this is going to be an interesting one for you given your background, but what color do you love the most and why?
Oh, green. Green, because there's how many different variations of it? And for me, it is a sign and a symbol and the essence of what true nature and earth and groundedness really represents for me. And it's a sign of growth. It is, it's calming. And Yeah, green in all aspects and in all senses of the word.
That's mine too. And
Yeah.
the same thing. The weirder the green, to me, the better.
Yeah, I mean, mossy green, fluorescent green, chartreuse, all of
Exactly.
them. I mean, they're all wonderful.
Yes, I agree. Well, thank you so much, Amanda. Where can people find your book or find you if they want to reach out?
Yes, of course. My book is available on Amazon. It's also on Audible, so you get to listen to this voice for a few hours if you are so inclined. And my website is my full name, amandagreaves.com, which is Amanda, GREAVES.com. And that's where all my information is on my coaching courses, book events, speaking. And I look forward to meeting your listeners. And this has been such a joy. I really appreciate taking the time and being a part of your experience in your podcast.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.